Hello. Guys, we need to stop, I think, some of what we're doing. Today I'm actually addressing the YouTube true crime world. And I may not be too popular after this, but I have to say these things. Regardless of how you feel about this, I wish that you would share this video, and you can badmouth me or whatever you want to do, but this needs to be out there. Please keep an open mind. I've spent many hours, many days in courtrooms against high-powered attorneys, from everything that you can imagine to major drug deals, defendants, and murder cases. Keep in mind that the defense attorney, the attorneys representing the defendant that's been brought in by law enforcement and the prosecutor, they have one goal, and that's to create reasonable doubt in at least one of the jury's mind. That's their only goal. They want to convince at least one juror that this person, this guilty person probably, next to them, may not be guilty. They're allowed to use any kind of deception, trickery, anything in the world to confuse the jury. So I've been thinking, and I'm not the only one, Incog and I discussed this. She asked me whether these true crime channels were doing good or bad for these investigations. I think they're doing good for keeping the cases in the eye of the public so we don't forget about the victims. I think it's good to push law enforcement. I've also spoke to Graz about this, and I've heard Gonzo mention that we have to be careful that we don't taint these cases. So I'm not the only one that has this concern, but I'm going to spell it out a little bit. This is serious business. I'm not going to roll it to you softly. This isn't softball. This is hardball. This is serious business. Some of the theories that I've seen on YouTube are very convincing. Some of you bring up persons of interest that make sense. And you talk about circumstantial evidence that might put them in the possible area of the crime. You talk about nefarious activity in the past from this person of interest. You talk about a possible motive. And some of it's very convincing. And there's a number of potential suspects out there in one particular crime, a double murder. Well, if I were a defense attorney representing the defendant once they do make their arrest and he's in the courtroom or she's in the courtroom, I'd be using these persons of interest and the theories behind them and present that information to the jury. I wouldn't be surprised if some YouTube videos were shown in the courtroom to the jury. And worst case scenario, if you created that video or you're talking on a podcast or whatever, and you're pointing to someone else other than the guilty party sitting next to the defense attorney, you might be subpoenaed into court and you might be up there being questioned about Why did you think so-and-so had the opportunity? Why did you think they would have the motive? You know, all those questions that you wouldn't want to answer under oath in the courtroom in front of a jury. And who knows? It could be on national television, some of these trials. So I would just ask you to think about what you're saying. If you want to send emails back and forth and use those initials, those kind of things, that's not as bad. But if we are putting initials on YouTube, or we're giving so much information that it's obvious who you're talking about, I'd be very careful. And I'd ask you to please back off on that. It could backfire. You could jeopardize a case. You could taint a case once they do come forward with the arrested party. Again, it's a little awkward. I know it's not what people want to hear. I'm new to the true crime world on YouTube, but this is something that's been eating at me for a few days, and I thought I'd just have to get it out. So, keep in mind, I'm going to kind of read a definition. Reasonable doubt is doubt that would prevent one, or maybe all, of the jury, in this case, that possibly the defendant is not guilty. And worst case scenario, like I said, I mean, if one juror refuses to vote guilty, there's a hung jury, and they'll have to do the trial over. Well, that first run would just be a practice run for the defense attorneys, and the prosecutor for that matter. But if a good attorney is able to present 3 or 4 or 5 other potential suspects, I think that could, create some reasonable doubt in jurors' minds, maybe all of them, and they come back with a not guilty verdict, and the defendant, the guilty party, goes free. Now, there's exceptions. If they can't have another trial. They can't retry somebody for the same crime once they've been acquitted. There are rare occasions when that could happen if there was some new convincing evidence that came to light, but that's not very likely. So, we don't want that to happen. Keep doing what you're doing. Let's just leave the initials out and the obvious suspect that you're looking at, person of interest, I should say. So, take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But please share it regardless. If you like my channel, please hit the like. Please subscribe. And hopefully we can all get along and we can continue. That's really all I've got. Give it some thought. Think about it. Let's be careful what we're saying. Have a good day.